Welcome to the Way of Hermes, where we explore the fascinating intersections of philosophy, mysticism, and ancient wisdom. Today, we're diving into the intriguing world of Ibn Sabin, a thinker who bridged the gap between philosophy and Sufism in Islamic thought. Now, before we delve into Ibn Sabin's ideas, let's set the stage by examining Hermetism and its relationship to both philosophy and mysticism in Islam. It's a complex tapestry, and I promise you, it's more captivating than you might think. When you hear the name Hermes, what comes to mind? For many modern students of philosophy, it conjures up images of the occult, think theurgy, alchemy, and astrology. But is this association fair? Let's unpack that a bit. It's true that Ibn Sabin dabbled in what we might call occult sciences. He believed, for instance, that the disconnected letters at the beginning of many Quranic surahs held hidden powers. These letters, he claimed, were formulas of incantation that could grant paranormal abilities to those who knew how to use them. But here's where it gets interesting. Should we dismiss Ibn Sabin as a mere occultist because of these beliefs? I'd argue that doing so would be a mistake. Many Islamic philosophers of his time believed in sciences we now consider occult, like astrology. It's crucial to remember that our modern categories of knowledge don't always map neatly onto historical thought. In fact, Ibn Sabin's approach was more rationalistic than you might expect. His work, Bud al-Arif, is essentially a guidebook for Gnostics and an introduction to mysticism. But here's the kicker. It's deeply focused on epistemology, critically examining the various paths to knowledge available in the Muslim world of his time. At the heart of Ibn Sabin's philosophy is the mastery of logic, or logos in Greek. He argued that before seeking divine inspiration, one must first understand proper reasoning methods. It's a surprisingly rational approach for a mystic, isn't it? But Ibn Sabin takes this further. For him, true knowledge transcends the boundaries between the knower, the known, and the act of knowing. They become one, unified in a single act of understanding. This idea of unity is central to his concept of wahdat al-wujud, or the unity of existence. This unified theory isn't just a philosophical curiosity. It's crucial to Ibn Sabin's understanding of Hermeticism. If we take his portrayal as accurate, it suggests that monism, the idea that all things are fundamentally one, was a defining aspect of Hermeticism in Muslim Spain. This conclusion challenges the assertion made by scholars like Festuger that it's impossible to construct a coherent philosophical system that could be called Hermeticism. Ibn Sabin's monistic approach provides a clear counter-argument to this view. So what exactly was Ibn Sabin's Hermeticism? It was a form of intellectual mysticism, corresponding to what scholar Garth Fowden has termed religio mentis, a religion of the mind. It drew heavily on certain books of the Corpus Hermeticum, a collection of ancient Greek texts attributed to Hermes Trismegistus. This form of Hermeticism was monistic, emanationist, and integrative. At its core was the idea that the intellectual principle, or nous in Greek, is the unifying factor underlying all of creation. One of the key ideas we find in both the Corpus Hermeticum and Ibn Sabin's work is the concept of the intellectual principle, or nous. In the Hermetic texts, we find passages like this one from Corpus Hermeticum 1. Know this, that which sees and hears within you is the word of the Lord, and nous is God the Father. They are not separate from each other, for their union is life. Ibn Sabin echoes this concept, referring to the intellectual principle as the Supreme Father, or Al-Ab al-Mu'azzam in Arabic. He describes it as the foundational attribute of the universe and the axis around which the existential order revolves. This isn't just flowery language, it's a profound philosophical statement about the nature of reality. The Hermetic texts also speak of Nu as a creative force. We read, Nu, the Creator, together with the word, encompassing the spheres and spinning them round with a rushing motion, caused those things he had made to revolve. This dynamic, creative aspect of Nu is mirrored in Ibn Sabin's understanding of the intellectual principle as the driving force behind existence. But Ibn Sabin's Hermeticism isn't just a rehashing of ancient ideas. He integrates these concepts into a comprehensive philosophical system that's both monistic and emanationist. In other words, he sees all of existence as fundamentally one, emanating from a single source, the intellectual principle. This view challenges us to rethink our understanding of reality. It suggests that the divisions we perceive in the world between mind and matter, subject and object, knower and known, are ultimately illusory. At the deepest level, Ibn Sabin argues, all is one. What's particularly fascinating about Ibn Sabin's approach is how he bridges the gap between rationality and mysticism. His Hermeticism isn't about abandoning reason for mystical experience. Instead, it's about using reason to reach a point where we can transcend its limitations and grasp a higher truth. This integrative approach sets Ibn Sabin apart from many of his contemporaries. It's not just philosophy, and it's not just mysticism. It's a unique synthesis that offers a new way of understanding our place in the cosmos. Now, let's dive deeper into Ibn Sabin's concept of wahdat al-wujud, or the unity of existence. This idea is at the heart of his philosophical system and provides a fascinating lens through which to view reality. Wahdat al-wujud isn't just a philosophical abstraction for Ibn Sabin. It's a comprehensive worldview that sees all of existence as fundamentally interconnected. Imagine, if you will, a vast tapestry where every thread is intricately woven with all others. That's the essence of Wahdat al-wujud. This concept challenges our everyday perception of the world as composed of separate, distinct entities. Instead, Ibn Sabin proposes that at the deepest level, all things are manifestations of a single, unified reality. It's a radical idea that blurs the lines between the physical and the metaphysical, the mundane and the divine. But here's where it gets really interesting. Ibn Sabin doesn't just apply this concept to the material world. He extends it to the realm of knowledge and understanding as well. Remember how we discussed his view on the unity of knowledge, the knower, and the known? This is where that idea comes into play. In Ibn Sabin's framework, true understanding isn't just about accumulating information. It's about recognizing the fundamental oneness that underlies all knowledge. When you truly know something, he argues, you're not separate from that knowledge. You become one with it. This might sound abstract, but think about those moments of profound insight you've had. Those aha moments where a concept suddenly clicks. In those instances, doesn't it feel like the boundary between you and the idea dissolves? That's a glimpse of what Ibn Sabin is talking about. Now, you might be wondering how this relates to Hermeticism. Well, this is where Ibn Sabin's genius really shines. He saw Wahdat al-wujud as the key to understanding the Hermetic tradition. In his view, the ancient wisdom attributed to Hermes Trismegistus was fundamentally about recognizing this underlying unity of all things. This interpretation of Hermeticism as a monistic philosophy was groundbreaking. It challenged the prevailing views of his time and continues to offer fresh insights for us today. Ibn Sabin wasn't just recycling ancient ideas, he was reinterpreting them in a way that created a coherent, all-encompassing philosophical system. But Ibn Sabin's Wahdat al-wujud isn't just an intellectual exercise. It has profound implications for how we live our lives and interact with the world around us. If everything is fundamentally one, then the boundaries we perceive between ourselves and others, between humanity and nature, become less rigid. This perspective can lead to a deeper sense of connection and responsibility. After all, if we're all part of the same unified existence, then how we treat others and our environment is ultimately how we treat ourselves. It's a philosophy that encourages empathy, compassion, and mindful living. It's a testament to the power of this idea that it can have such wide-ranging implications. His work, Bud al-Arif, isn't just another mystical text. It's a guidebook that approaches gnosis through a surprisingly epistemological lens. What makes Bud al-Arif so unique is its critical review of the various paths to knowledge available in the Muslim world of Ibn Sabin's time. It's as if he's saying, before we dive into mystical experiences, let's first understand how we know what we know. This approach is beautifully illustrated in a passage from the Corpus Hermeticum that resonates with Ibn Sabin's ideas. It states, "The present subject is know, its powers and variations. We have said that it is one thing in men, but another in irrational creatures. Again, in other creatures it is not beneficent. In each man, as it quells passion and desire, it acts differently, and it is necessary to realize that there are some men who possess reason, logos, and others who do not. The key to unlocking divine knowledge isn't just through ecstatic experiences or ritual practices. It's through the rigorous application of reason and logic. But here's where it gets really interesting. Ibn Sabin doesn't see reason as an end in itself, but as a means to transcend its own limitations. He's not rejecting mystical insight. He's providing a rational framework to approach it. This idea is echoed in another passage from the Corpus Hermeticum. I, nous itself, come to the aid of the devout, the noble, pure, merciful, and those who live piously, and my presence becomes a help, and straightway they know all things. But Ibn Sabin doesn't stop there. He pushes this idea even further, suggesting that at the highest levels of understanding, the distinctions between knowledge, the knower, and the known begin to blur. It's a concept that challenges our usual ways of thinking about knowledge and reality. This perspective is reflected in yet another Hermetic passage. The supreme good is unlimited, and it has no beginning and no end. But to us it appears that knowledge has a beginning. Knowledge, then, is not the origin of the supreme good, but for us it provides the origin of what is to be known. It's an approach that doesn't ask us to abandon reason, but to use it as a ladder to climb to higher levels of understanding. Once we reach those heights, we might find that the ladder itself transforms into something else entirely. This synthesis of rationality and mysticism is what makes Ibn Sabin's approach so fascinating and unique. He's not content to simply accept mystical experiences at face value, nor is he satisfied with pure intellectual speculation. Instead, he's charting a middle path that seeks to integrate both. Ibn Sabin describes the intellectual principle as a spiritual substance or jawhar ruhani. It's not just an abstract concept, but the very essence of existence itself. Imagine it as the underlying fabric of the universe, the thread that weaves together all of reality. This intellectual principle isn't static or passive. According to Ibn Sabin, it's the dynamic force that drives the entire existential order. It's the axis around which everything revolves, the foundation upon which all of creation rests. Now you might be wondering how this relates to our everyday experience. Well, Ibn Sabin suggests that this intellectual principle is not something separate from us, but is in fact intimately connected to our own capacity for reason and understanding. This idea resonates with a passage from the Corpus Hermeticum that states, "The unmoving nous moves matter thus. Since the cosmos is a sphere, that is a head, and there is nothing material above the head, as there is nothing mental below the feet, where all is matter. So know is the head, and is itself moved as a sphere, that is, in a manner appropriate to a head." The intellectual principle isn't some distant, unknowable force. It's the very essence of our own capacity for thought and understanding. This perspective has profound implications. If the intellectual principle is indeed the foundation of all existence, and if it's intimately connected to our own intellect, then the path to understanding the universe might not lie in looking outward, but in delving deeper into our own consciousness. It's a bit like the ancient Greek maxim, know thyself, but taken to a cosmic scale. By understanding the workings of our own mind, Ibn Sabin suggests, we might come to understand the fundamental nature of reality itself. But this isn't just a philosophical abstraction. Ibn Sabin saw practical implications in this idea. He believed that by aligning ourselves with this intellectual principle, by honing our rational faculties and deepening our understanding, we could tap into a wellspring of divine knowledge. This approach to spirituality through intellect sets Ibn Sabin apart from many of his mystical contemporaries. He's not advocating for a rejection of reason in favor of pure spiritual experience. Instead, he's suggesting that reason itself, when pursued to its highest levels, can become a form of spiritual practice.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Hermetic Dialogues, the official podcast of the Way of Hermes website. If you are interested in free articles on Hermeticism and related topics, or want to study this ancient tradition through our online course, be sure to visit our website at wayofhermes.com.